Hello everybody, this is Jim Feist in Las Vegas, and I'm joined today by Hank Goldberg in sunny South Florida. I think it's sunny down there. It's very hot out here today, Hank. It's in the 90s. We're going to be in the 90s most of the week.
It's going to be a little overcast here. It may rain this afternoon, but that's typical this time of year.
Right.
It's raining everywhere.
Not here. We don't have rain. We could use some rain. I'd like some rain, but we don't get much of that out here. We got some interesting basketball series going on. Well, you know, Pelicans did what you and I kind of thought they might. They did very well in their setup with Portland. They swept them. Last night, the Spurs came back and made it. Well, they didn't. I don't know if they made it a series, but they prolonged it by winning at home against the champions, Golden State Warriors. They go back to Oakland this week.
That'll be the end.
Yeah, it will. The Cavs did what the Cavs do. I mean, they had a good lead. They lost it in Game 3, and they lost the game. They lost the lead in Game 4, but they held on and won. So that series is 2-2 now.
You know something? The Cavs are not good. They were lucky that Corver blamed them out in this game because LeBron went 3 for 16 in the third quarter. They were in real trouble, and if it wasn't for Corver's outside shooting, they were going to go down 3-1 in this series.
Well, they're supposed to have other players step up. It can't always be LeBron.
They don't have a setup man, and that's going to kill them. They don't have a guy who can set up the other people. And Love wasn't hitting last night. And they were lucky to win that game. And like I said, Corver, had he not started hitting those threes at the end of the game, they were probably going to lose that one.
Yeah, you're
right. And if they go down 3-1, they're done. This team is, I'll tell you something, Indiana might still win that series.
Well, yeah, they could. Well, every game has been, they've been in the games. I mean, there's nobody is dominating here. So, yeah, it's a 6.
Well, they blew a 17-point lead again last night. That's been happening to them all season long. And I got to tell you something. I don't think that coach will be back next year.
Well, the big question is, will LeBron be back next year?
Probably not.
Where do you think he'll go?
Could go to Philadelphia, or he could go to Houston. I'm not buying that Lakers story.
That's interesting. It's going to be interesting where he goes. I mean, he's an amazing basketball player, no question about it. He probably has a career in show business, movies, a decent actor. You know, that has happened before, and he could do that. And, I mean, the time will come when he won't be able to play like he is now, and he'll move on. So L.A. makes sense since he owns homes out there. But I don't know. Speaking of Philadelphia, they're pretty darn good.
Yep.
And they got Joel Embiid back, and they are a pretty damn good basketball team.
Well, they're playing against a team that's very incomplete, and that's one thing. And Miami has no defense around the rim. Whiteside's a stiff. He's no match for them, and he's playing horribly. And if it wasn't for Dwayne Wade, that game could have been a blowout on Saturday. So, you know, Wade, you know, he can have a good game, and then he's going to come back the next game, and he just can't perform 2 in a row. So I think they'll wrap that game up when they get back to that series up when they get back to Philadelphia. But they're loaded, Philadelphia, and we'll see what happens. I think Philadelphia could beat Cleveland. And I'll tell you, the series that's really interesting now is the Washington-Toronto series. That was a great game to watch yesterday. But, Beal got fouled out for the first time this year. Had a lousy call that fouled him out of the game. The other guy backed into him and knocked him over, and they called Beal for that foul that knocked him out, and they still came through and won the game. And I think Washington's going to come through and win that series. Toronto's going into their usual playoff swoon.
Well, it's been a home series so far. Both games have been won or all four games have been won by the home team. Yeah, that pattern.
Yep.
You have to watch those kind of patterns in these games. Philadelphia, we talked a little bit about that. They opened a 10-point favorite, Hank. There's still 10 in some spots, but there's a lot of 9.5. So there's been, double-digit favorites in the NBA are pretty rough. And Golden State's an 11-point favorite over San Antonio. That's a big mountain to overcome in an NBA game, especially when most of the points come from three-point land, which is a very fickle statistic to begin with. So but the way it is, Philadelphia is definitely the better team, no question. You mentioned Dwayne Wade. He can't perform every night. He's had a lot of injuries in his career, and he's 36 years old, which is old for a basketball player for sure. Just now 2 games tonight. Houston at Minnesota. Houston lost to Minnesota in game 3. And Oklahoma City's at Utah, and that game is both the Houston opened 5.5 is up to 6, and Utah opened 6 and it's down to 4 or 4.5. So the money has been on Oak City and on very little on Houston.
Well, Utah's playing great ball right now. After the first game, they really woke up. They've got 2 outstanding outside shooters, and they're very well coached. And I think they've got a big coaching edge in that series. And they're up 2-1 now. And I took Utah in that series, and I think I'm going to wind up winning. I gave out three dogs. And one of them swept, so I already got that one in the bank. And the other one was, Utah was the other one. And they got a good shot right now. Well, I might be 3 for 3 on those pre-series selections. So I'm alive in all 3, and I'm ahead of the game in the Utah series. Utah suddenly, is playing like I expected him to play after being very disappointed. And Rubio, after having a lousy game 1, has really sparked that team.
Well, this is a big comeback game for Oak City. They've lost the last 2 games to Utah straight up. So this is one of those situations where when you have teams that are relatively, on the same plane, one is not tremendously better than the other, you can sometimes get some edges for that team that's lost a couple games in a row to bounce back with a pretty superior effort. Now, that doesn't necessarily have to happen, but according to the money, that's what they're betting. The marketplace is taking the points with Oklahoma City so far. Now, that can change by late afternoon. There's always a lot of big money out there, and you don't always know which way it's going to go. But that's what they're doing so far.
I think Oklahoma City is a public team because of the 3 stars, but they don't play well together. and and they become dependent on one guy, and if he doesn't deliver, they're in trouble. They don't play defense, and I think Utah right now is, they got a sensational rookie, and Rubio is a great combination, and they're playing well off each other, and they've got a couple other guys who are playing well. They are playing as a team, as opposed to Oklahoma City, which is a bunch of individuals who can't play well together, and they're dysfunctional.
Yes, they are, and I don't like the mix of those three guys together on the same floor. I think that there's, I don't know. That's a strange mix. Those three players, the star player. Although Adams is probably a more important player than people give him credit for. He's very solid. Gives you a big presence underneath. And that they have the talent on that team, but they haven't been able to put it together. And you might put that on the coach a little bit, not being able to put the pieces together in the way that can be more consistent. But the one thing they are is inconsistent. Utah's a more balanced team.
Something. I feel sorry for that coach. He's got a bunch of guys who are not coachable on that team.
Well, there's a lot of guys in the NBA that are not coachable. I mean, they make a lot of money and they have big egos, and so it's hard to manage them. But there's some coaches that are better at it than others. But Carmelo is a very difficult guy to coach. I'm actually surprised he's been able to take the backup role as well as he has. George is great. Westbrook is. The ability for Westbrook to get to the bucket and do what he does is quite amazing. However, you have to have the right kind of blend around him to make it work to the degree that it should. That may never happen. Who knows? That may not be in the cards for that team. But so far, Oklahoma City won the first game. They covered. Utah wins game 2 at Oak City. Then they come home and they win again. So now we have Utah winning the last 2 games. This is going to be an emotional game. There's going to be a little bit less scoring, I think, in this game. I think the betting line is open 210.5. It's down to 208 and 207 in another spot. So they're expecting more defense. Now, Utah, of course, is a great defensive team. But, you don't usually think of Oklahoma City as shutting anyone down. But this game is going to have a lot of tension. This is a big game. Oak City, nobody wants to lose. To say that Oak City doesn't want to go down 3-1, well, you know that. You don't need me to tell you that. I think this is going to be very intense. This game is going to be very intense. A good game tonight, 7:30 Pacific time tonight, 10:30 Eastern tonight. So that's pretty late for a basketball game, isn't it, Hank?
What time is it? That game is at 10:30?
That's, your time, 10:30.
Yeah, well, it's out west.
Yeah, I know, but you guys are going to watch the end of this game. It's going to be at 1 o'clock.
I've been watching them so far. So.
Well, that's because it's our business. We have to watch them. But I mean, the average fan doesn't like staying up till 1 o'clock in the morning on a work night. But that's just a little bit of a late start, in my opinion, for the East Coasters.
I don't think it's been hurting the ratings all that badly.
No,
these games have been competitive, a lot of them, and people are into the NBA playoffs.
Well, yeah, so am I. I'm not a guy I don't really like the regular season because they're jockeying around, resting players. It's more of a, excuse my French, but it's more of a shit show in the regular season. It's at least now, they're putting up big efforts. They're not, nobody's quitting. Everybody comes to play, and it's much more interesting that way. So Cleveland goes home in this next game. They won 2. Indiana's won 2. Like you talked about a little earlier, 3 of the 4 games have gone under the total. Yesterday's game was right around the actual line, so I don't know. It depends on when you bet it, whether you won it or lost it or pushed it.
It came right on the number, I think.
Yeah, but there was numbers, 203, 203 and a half, 204 and a half. So basically, the bookmakers got middled on that damn thing. But it depends on when you bet it, either won or lost, based on your line shopping ability. But only, the highest score was yesterday for any team in that series was Cleveland. They hit at 104.
Yeah, but the first 3 games have been under in that game.
Yeah, I think you got to look at that continuing. The game's 205 right now. I think that's too high. I think with the intensity of this thing, and these teams struggle. I mean, and I don't see that. If I was making a number on this, I would stick it at maybe maybe 201 or maybe 200. I don't see this game unless the game totally gets out of hand, or at the end it's so close that you have a million fouls, which can always push a game over by that. But unless that happens, I think it's another underplay.
Cleveland goes for long periods of time where they don't score in games. It happened again in the third quarter, which where they blew a 17-point lead. And this has been going on all season long. And and LeBron is forced to play the entire second half. He never got a break.
Well, that's pretty much what he did all year. The man is in a different league, both as an athlete and as a player. I mean, he plays more minutes than anybody. It doesn't seem to wear him out. He's in unbelievable shape, and his skills are beyond compare. I mean, just what he can do, handling the ball, rebounding, driving, shooting one. I mean, he's an incredible athlete, unbelievable.
I'll tell you, the Boston-Milwaukee series has gotten interesting, but I think Boston, they can't shoot on the road. I'll tell you, Rozier has been killing them in the 2 games they played at Milwaukee. He couldn't hit anything. He couldn't miss at home, and he gets on the road and he misses everything, and he makes bad passes, and he plays no defense at all. They were just going by him like he was a real turnstile. I was very disappointed in his play of the last 2 games. He was a detriment to them.
Yeah, and the likelihood is he'll bounce back with a good effort going back home. That's a Wednesday. That's a Tuesday game. That's tomorrow night. The game opened Boston 3 and 204, and it's now up to 204 and a half and 205. Well, that's a small operation there. 204 and a half. And the interesting thing, there's been some money on the dog. They took the 3. The 3s are gone. It's 2.5. And the 204s are gone also, except for one place. And most of it's 204 and a half. Now, every one of the games in this series has gone over the total. But the first game was overtime, and I don't have it in front of me. I don't remember what the actual score was at end of regulation, so I can't really comment whether it went over or not. But that's going to be an interesting game. A lot of intensity. You're going to see a lot of pressure on these teams now. Getting down to the end of these.
Well, if you recall, the first game was that Boston was shooting the lights out. They kept making one 3-pointer after another, and that's what pushed the game over in that game.
Well, they did play overtime also in that game.
Yeah.
So I don't remember.
Milwaukee's top guy fouled out.
Yes, he did. Yeah. So we have two series there. Toronto, Washington, all home team victories, and Boston, Milwaukee, all home team victories. So, you know, that's the trend in those two series. You know, Philadelphia has won two. They won 2 games on the road and 1 game at home.
Miami was no match for them. They can't defend. You know, they have no defense whatsoever. They were giving up over 200 points a game during the regular season, and Philadelphia had 1 game where they went to 128, and another game where they went to 130 against them. Right. They were scoring at will when they needed to.
Yeah, you're right. It's going to be interesting. Hank, anything else you want to talk about? We're at that 20-minute mark when I got to sign off this thing. Anything you want?
Well, baseball has been fun.
Oh, baseball's been good. Yeah.
And Dodgers came back and won an interesting game last night, and the Red Sox went up north and lost a couple of games. So maybe they're human. Well,
the Red Sox were coming off that big series down, you know, Southern California, and you know, these guys have their motions go up and down just like anybody else, and they ran into Oakland, and they were playing pretty well. I'm going to give everybody a run line play. You know, sometimes these big favorites are just too out of whack. I'm not going to lay 230 or 190 or anything on a game, but I'm going to take Cleveland today and lay the 1.5 runs with Cleveland with Carrasco over Guzman. That's my free play for the podcast this morning. So, Hank, I'll talk to you again on Wednesday. I got to cut this off because I'll run out of tape, out of recording capacity.
Okay.
Thank you, Hank, and have a good day.
All right. You too.
Bye-bye.